Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. Give us a few more minutes, Max.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit set up too.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good evening, some of you. I think we have a quorum. Today, I think Max was going to show some of the Dolt integration. I believe that's on the thing. And then Ketan and I guess Sören, we're going to go over the magic of Helm. So, Max, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, sure. Thank you all for having me. So I'm going to try to be brief. I'm happy to go into details as much as necessary, or talk about Dolt more if you guys are interested in that. But what I've built is an SQLAlchemy specific integration. I think there's been a little bit of confusion about it. So I posted a link to a document in the chat that gives a brief summary. I had a little trouble running the Docker image to show a live demo, unfortunately. But the core of the integration is fairly simple. I think the difficulty is understanding sort of the intersection of this database management software in Python. So I guess as I wrote in that doc, I sort of think of SQLAlchemy as a couple different parts, but it's sort of like to SQL databases in Python as pandas as to data frames. SQLAlchemy is sort of this higher level interface that library users use to access like arbitrary data sources in an SQL format. So the comparison is sort of like you use pandas data frames. Pandas accesses a lot of different data sources, CSV, JSON. It for the most part, lets you not worry about what the data source is and where your data is coming from. So for Flyte is a library, and Flyte is not opinionated about what data sources its users are using, right? They may be using Postgres or MySQL or Oracle. And so SQLAlchemy, that single integration basically lets you connect to an arbitrary set of databases, because SQLAlchemy has logic to sort of handle all the different use cases for a variety of backend databases. Like that's what SQLAlchemy's use is. Another example, so like some of you have probably used Django, and Django's logic is tied pretty closely, I think, to MySQL, if I'm not mistaken. Someone on my team knows more about that than me, but I guess someone on my team is having a lot of difficulties with Django because it's so tied specifically to the logic of one database. Some of you may have used Fast API. It's sort of similar to Django. It's like another web server in Python. And Fast API's approach was to use SQLAlchemy as an integration. So then their users don't have to use MySQL as a backend. They can bring their own database. Fast API's code is generic. So that's sort of, that's I think the hardest part about understanding like what this integration does. So all I did in the code was create an SQLAlchemy task. You give it the URI for your specific database, which is composed of a couple different parts. If you see the first example, oh, I could share my screen too. That might make it easier for you to follow my pointer. Okay, so this is the entirety of what a user needs to do to connect to their database. So here we have the dialect. We have a specific Python module for that dialect. So MySQL has a couple different Python libraries that have small differences between them. PyMySQL, Python MySQL connector. But basically, this is just telling us MySQL, and we're going to use PyMySQL as the underlying like Python connection. And then this just points us to our database. So this could be an RDS instance running in Amazon. It can be running localhost like I'm showing here. But you have this database URI. You pass it to a task, and you can give it, well, in this case, like a select. But basically, it just what happens underneath is SQLAlchemy will connect to the database, and it abstracts sending the right select statement to your database, depending on like what you've configured here. And it should work exactly similarly to the SQLite 3 task that you guys have existing in your database. With that task, you point it to a database file, and you do the exact same thing. So I kept the config as similar as possible to the SQLite task. And that's most of it. So Ketan, I hope I'm saying your name right. Sorry if I mispronounced that. So I added some secret support too. So one of the reasons, so we still have a little bit of, I think, edge cases to hammer out before the PR is merged. Even though the core of it's very simple, testing gets a little tricky when there's so many different databases on the back end, and just integration testing databases can be a little tricky in itself. But something that you couldn't do with SQLite that you can do with most other databases is have fine configuration over like usernames and passwords and connection credentials. So we exposed a way for you to have secrets in your environment. And this is the Flyte syntax for declaring like a secret data class. And you can pass those as override arguments so that you're not, encoding like protected passwords in this URI string. So that is most the entirety. How you'd use this in a task, or I guess in a workflow, sorry, is you declare a task, you have this workflow dependency, and because we're returning data frames from this task, Flyte does its magic and you get a data frame. I guess that's so again, none of this is Dolt specific. There's a little bit of confusion about this. This should be useful for Postgres, MySQL, etc. I just need to do a little bit of work more to get the tests to satisfactory to the Flyte core team before we can merge this. Yeah, hopefully that was pretty brief. I'm happy to go into more details. I can also, maybe I should give a little background in Dolt and myself too. I probably could have started with that, but I'm a software engineer at Dolt Hub. I'm not here primarily to, this should be useful to others not using Dolt. This should just be generally useful to SQL database users. But Dolt Hub is an SQL database, and that's something that I work on, and I work on integrations, which probably makes sense given the context of this talk. So maybe a 30-second on Dolt. Dolt is a version control like database that is SQL compliant. So that is complicated because it has several meanings, but that means on one hand, Dolt has created this storage engine. So they've taken the way that Git stores data and deltas and blobs in this commit hash format, and they've optimized it for tabular data rows in the database. And from that like lower level like data storage format, they've built the primitives in order to also expose it as a MySQL compliant database. So Dolt can run as a server, and in that server you can change rows, you can add tables, you can do schema mutations, and you can add commits and create this commit graph the exact same way you would with Git, except you have both everything you would expect from Git and everything you expect from SQL. So that is think I've covered everything that I've wanted to. I'm happy to answer any other questions, but otherwise, I'll probably give it back to you guys.
You guys should call it blockchain. It'll be worth 3 times as much.
There's, yeah, I mean, Git is a blockchain.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
so Git is the original blockchain. I'm not sure we want to brand ourselves that way. I think
That sounds awesome. Man. That's cool. We'll go check it out.
Hey Max, I had a question about Dolt's way of handling the versions. Can you select by a version?
Yeah, you can select from as of. So you would do, let's see, select.
Is that an extension on the query?
Yeah, so you can say as of, and you put a commit here. I'm hoping to get, so I've spent a lot of the last week trying to formalize. Yeah. So you would just do an as of commit here, and I think we might have branch support too. So you might be able to say like new branch. You can do it. There are a lot of weird ways that you can like insert Git style stuff into SQL commands with Dolt.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, doing this with performance is probably extremely hard. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm definitely not the one who's best to ask about that, but we have some really smart guys who have been spending years optimizing the performance of the storage engine in order for me to be able to show you guys cool stuff.
Just another question on Dolt Hub. So is that a completely hosted MySQL? Is it free for some? I see some like data sets over there. Is that free for those open source data sets or what?
Yeah, it's free. It's free for open source data sets. It's free for private data sets too. I think we recently let that open. We do have hosted options. We have a handful of companies that do have like private hosted. I think we're still working out our funding model there. But yeah, it works. We basically, our founder is very set on doing everything you would expect GitHub to do. So if you want hosted private data sets or you want enterprise version on-prem, we're sort of flexible in supporting what people want.
Thank you. Any other questions from? I guess there is a team that wants integration with SQL style databases. They're not here, but so basically this adds that integration plus Dolt. So it's awesome. Thank you,
guys.
Yeah, George, to you.
Yeah, I think unless there are any more questions, thank you, Max. That's awesome. I think it's a Ketan and Sören.
Yeah, Sören, do you want me to talk or do you want to talk to you?
Yeah, sure, go on.
Yeah, you'll have to butt in and help me, but I don't have a present. I actually do have a presentation, but that's what, like 3 slides that I just wrote while Max was talking. Thank you, Max. It was essentially, we have as a, so last few weeks we've been thinking about moving to, or we've been talking with various folks within the, sorry, 1 minute, let me see. Yeah, last few weeks we've been, I think Sören probably demoed or talked about Helm maybe a month or 2 months ago. And in the last few weeks, we followed up with a bunch of folks who have deployed it in Flyte in production. And we asked them, what do they use? What do they prefer? And the answers were very, very surprising to me. Some of them, I think there are 2 teams that use Kustomize, but most of the others use completely self-described deployment systems. That means they're actually handwriting the YAML or something to that effect and using Terraform, sometimes using YAML directly. In some cases, also they are updating the config completely automatically. And and what that led me to understand is that most folks who are going to deploy Flyte in production, they actually take it on themselves to convert Flyte into the way it fits in their production ecosystem, and there is no one size fits all in the production ecosystem. There are people doing all kinds of things. So then we started thinking about like, okay, what is the way that we can get new users the most value from Flyte? How do we get them to start using Flyte really quickly? Let's try and understand, but why we thought about Helm even. So Flyte is so extremely extensible that it's a problem. It's like it just has configuration all over the place in the backend, and what has happened, it's a reflection on not understanding who the user is for the configuration. When we built the configuration, we do not actively as a community think about who's consuming the configuration, and then the configuration is an extremely important consumption point. So what happens is sometimes we have, and maybe let me try and open up a config to show you an example of what I mean. So one second. Okay. So this configuration is for sending out notifications from Flyte, line number 313 to 330. And if you see, it talks about notification. This is specific to AWS. So we do a great job of like allowing people to configure AWS separately and GCP separately. The problem is we don't know what this structure is, right, as a user. So that needs documentation. But okay, documentation decides the point. The structure of this is also very confusing because there is a publisher and then there is a processor. And we have no idea as a user, like why is there a publisher and a processor in a workflow notification system, right? From a point of view of the user, it should have been, hey, here's a queue, send my information to me. Here's the email body that I want, and cool, that's it. But that's not the case. So one of the things going forward of bringing this up today is whenever we are writing extra configuration bits, we should think about who the user is, and the user is like almost like a user of FlyteKit. We think about users of FlyteKit, we try to make it simple, we try to make it understandable. I think we should do the same for configuration as well. But how can we systematically improve this? And that's where we started thinking about Helm. And Sören and Ruslan did all the work. Actually, I am just kind of talking here. So what we did is we started thinking, what if we were able to break down Helm or our deployment system into a basic outline of what we think Flyte is. Flyte consists of components, right? And these are things like Flyte admin, like propeller, and so on, right? It consists of dependencies. So we need S3, GCS, one of them, right? For example, we need a database. We have some core configuration, like number of threads to run, number of replicas to run, and so on. And then we have backend plugins like Spark, Flink, now Dolt, for example, maybe one day in backend, so etc. Right? So what if we lay out the structure to match this way and then allow users to pick and choose what they want to deploy? And to do this, I started experimenting with some stuff. And this is the branch that we're working on. It's called the Helm working branch. It's working, and I'll do a demo of how it looks and works. But some cool things about Helm, once you create the configuration, it automatically generates the documentation for you. So in this case, it has generated the documentation of what are the various configuration knobs that you need, that you have at your disposal. It also gives you example configuration. So in some of our cases, most of our config is YAML, so it converts it into a JSON. Not that useful, but it can be made useful, and I'll show you an example. So this is the configuration for Flyte Propeller. And what you can see is we can put a description that says core propeller configuration follows the structure specified here. And if you click on that, you see an example of the configuration. And ideally, and this is one of the pieces that I'm working on, is that every configuration piece has such an example, and this example is automatically tested because we can write a Golang test example. That way, the users can see what are all the fields that are possible in the configuration, how do you configure? Here's an example, and the actual fields are below, just described below in the config structure. So that way, at the point of creating the config, the users have access to the description of the configuration. And this is one of the things that we're working on. So once you have this, how do you really use Helm? It's a 1-second overview. Helm consists of this thing called as values. Values is essentially all the configuration knobs that you can tweak, and templates. For most users, you don't need to worry about the templates. Templates are like deployments, and they get auto-generated using Go templating language. But values is the most important thing when new users want to install Flyte. And the good part about values is that it actually allows you to have defaults for everything. So what we have done is we've created a values.yaml that follows the structure that I just laid out in the presentation. So if you go through it, these are all the components, and all of them have some same defaults already specified. So Flyte admin, you can the image to use, the resources, data catalog, Flyte propeller, do you want caching, Flyte console. And then you have other settings like dependencies, or in Sandbox case, we have dependencies that should not be used in production, but we do have dependencies. So that would be Redis, Postgres, Minio, Contour, if you want to deploy Kubernetes dashboard. And then the actual core dependencies of Flyte, which is storage and DB, only 2 real dependencies that we need. The storage is S3 or GCS and DB. And then comes down a bunch of configuration, and the entire configuration for various components of Flyte is in one big configuration. And the way I'm improving this now is that for every configuration, there is an associated link to that place that I showed you. So that generates the documentation automatically. So from here, you can jump to the actual code, and it's auto documenting. But most importantly, all of them have same defaults, and we'll see how these same defaults come into play. And then you can add other optional system components like workflow scheduler, workflow notifications, cluster resource manager. And then if you want to add plugins, you can add Spark operator, you can add PyTorch operator, and so on. Now, let's say we want to build a config for Sandbox. And here's an example for that config. You actually don't even need to specify these, but you can say that, okay, these are all defaults. I'm not changing anything. Everything's just the default. Oh, I wanted to add a different tag for the image that I want to use. And I want to use Kubernetes dashboard, and I want to use these specific configs. So I enabled it. Besides that, I wanted to change the storage. So I want to use my own S3 bucket. The default for storage configuration allows you to have Minio as the Sandbox default. So that's what it's doing. And the database configuration. And if you want, you can now optionally, and this is just to show that, hey, I'm updating the S3 bucket. I can actually change my task resource defaults. I can change the default environment variables that should be injected. And that's about it. This is all the configuration of Flyte now, including Flyte admin, data catalog, Flyte propeller, all of it. And I don't need any scheduler. I don't need any notifications. I'm keeping the cluster resource manager as is. And I don't want Spark operator and PyTorch operator. So this is the total configuration of Flyte. And now if I want to install it, so you say Helm install. It doesn't actually, by default, we don't create a namespace. You give it a namespace and you say create a namespace, and you can give it the values file. In this case, the values file is values sandbox.yaml, and you call the deployment a name. In this case, we are calling it Flyte, and you give it the path where I find the Helm chart and go for it. That shows you everything's coming up. It will take a bit, make sure, but as it comes up, your UI should be exposed on localhost 30081. So this was Sandbox configuration from Helm. And the reason why we actually went with Helm is this. for most users of Python, pip install is the way that they want to interact with the problem. And that's why for a system like Flyte, which uses Kubernetes, it's extremely complex to use pip install because we want to install a bunch of components in Kubernetes. So we wanted to give them an analogous thing to pip install, and that's Helm install, in my opinion. Again, there is no right answer. This is one choice that we are making. We are still keeping customize till we absolutely are stable with Helm. Then it comes a decision, and we want to open this up to the community. It's like, how do we want to move forward with customize and Helm? I don't think we can maintain both completely all the time. We can always make one primary and the second secondary, which means that the primary will be maintained and the secondary will need help from the community to maintain it. I think both can be maintained as a regression suite. So we should be able to figure out bugs and problems in things like that, but it's still harder to do. So that's the current take, and let's see if this is done. Yeah, everything's running. I can now again share this thing. Yep, so that's up. So it came up from Helm with minimal changes, hopefully. And the idea is the sandbox YAML will be the default YAML. So when you do Helm install Flyte, you will just get sandbox by default. And I'll show you an example of how EKS looks. And this is mostly working. So you can add annotations because that's what IAM needs. You can add the extra security groups. If you need to update, you can update the server ports and so on. You can enable more plugins. And one of the things that happens is if you're using Spark operator, for example, you can add configuration for Spark plugin itself within the Spark operator deployment. So this is EKS, and it looks very similar to the regular values.yaml. And all of this will be available in our GitHub repo, and we will publish the chart, the main chart. Sören, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just one thing. Right now, what you showed was still Helm, the repo, the Git repo locally. So that, but when we publish the thing, the chart to Artifact Hub, which is the way to deploy Helm charts, then people can actually install the chart from there, just without having to pull the Git repo. So it's really like, yeah, like Ketan said, like pip install. You can just do Helm install, repo name / Flyte, and then it will install Sandbox. So this is really should really make it easy for people to get started.
Yeah, our intention for moving to Helm is that day one experience or day zero experience for users, really. Like, I think the day zero, in my opinion, still is pip install Flyte kit and you run everything locally. And then day one is Helm install Flyte onto any Kubernetes cluster that you have. And then from there, you keep on updating it. Any suggestions, questions in that? And I know Jeev has questions about Helm versus, but Jeev, do you want to chime in?
No, I don't have any problems with Helm at all. I actually like Helm. I think they're also heading in the right direction in terms of like getting rid of Tiller, being installed in the cluster and stuff like that. I think eventually Freenome will also move to something a little bit more modern than Customize. But what I was telling Ketan is that like we are pretty deeply entrenched in Customize, so we're gonna at least try and provide some support for Customize over the next few quarters or so for Flyte, and try to keep it in sync with Helm. And but I think that for everything else, like Helm is probably the right choice. So, we're on board.
Thank you, Jeev. No, I think we will keep customize and sync for the next few quarters ourselves. I think we are not going to break it. And I think the right way to do this is, again, who's adding new config, let's have same defaults in the code itself. There's a nice way to have defaults in Flyte configuration system. Just have those defaults. Anything else?
Hey, Ketan, this is Praful. I had a question. So you showed the values.yaml file. Can that be generated to show what all dependencies I can customize to add some, like whichever ones I want to override? The first thing is like what all dependencies I have. If it's a huge definition that we currently have for customize, it's very difficult to know what all dependencies we have. And does that become simpler when we move to Helm?
Yeah, Sören, we were discussing this, right? Like basically, how do you discover the configuration values without the documentation? Can you just dump the default configuration, let's say locally, or the configuration options locally? And I think there is a way, right, Sören?
Yeah, I think there's a Helm show command, something like that. I'm not sure if it works. It might only work if you already installed the chart, but I think it should be possible. Yeah, to just dump these values out.
Yeah, there is a way. At least that's what we are thinking, and that's why we are trying to add all the documentation and so on. So it actually, when I look at Helm show, it shows you the README directly. It shows you all the values. It seems, and so we will aim to do that and improve the documentation through that process. Yeah, it does show actually even locally. Helm show values that.
Okay, good. Thanks.
The only problem is Helm doesn't allow you to have multiple values. Like you can apply, but I don't think that is shown by the values. Like you can't say Helm show values EKS, right? So at least that's what my understanding is. I could be wrong. Okay. That's it from my side.
I think that's a wrap today, unless anybody has any questions or any news that has come up. But thank you, Sören. Thank you, Max. Look forward to digging into Dolt. Looks awesome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We will see you in a couple weeks. I think Sandra will send out an agenda. If anybody wants to present, you're always welcome. Just grab the meeting notes and write in what you want to talk about. Drop Sandra or me a note, and you'll get on the agenda. It's a real high stress process. And we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.